Denzel Washington didn't look away when Joy Behar leaned in across the table, her pen tapping so fast now it was like a metronome daring him to slip off beat. He sat with his hands clasped, elbows on the table, shoulders relaxed in a way that made the hush pull tighter because they could feel the coil under the calm. Whoopi Goldberg kept her eyes on him, her tone measured, but her fingers drummed lightly on her mug. Denzel, you say you won't be a puppet, but you know how this works. When you speak, people listen. What do you want them to hear? Denzel turned to her, his voice low enough that it forced the hush to bend closer. I want people to remember they're bigger than the labels we slap on each other. Bigger than the headlines that tell them who they're supposed to hate this week. Joy's laugh cracked the tension like a hammer on old glass. You're dodging, Denzel. That's what you do. You say something big and soulful, so nobody asks you to name names. His eyes flicked back to her, not even a hint of a smile now. You want names, Joy? I could name corporations that profit off division. Politicians that keep power by stirring fear. Media that survives by keeping you angry. But you already know them. Joy's pen tapped again, faster. You're putting yourself above all that. Saint Denzel, who never took a check from the system. Sonny Hostin slid in, voice calm but edged enough to slice. Joy, let him answer. He didn't say he's above it. He's saying he's aware of it. Denzel nodded, his hands never moving. I know I'm part of the same world. I've done the junkets. I've read the script they want me to read. But that's why I can say no more. Joy's eyebrow shot up like a blade. No more? So what? You're done acting? You're done making millions. The hush jumped as that line bounced around the walls. A few people shifted, as if they wanted to see if he'd flinch. Denzel didn't. I'll make movies when they're worth making. I'll say yes when the story tells the truth. But I won't sit here, or anywhere, and be your mouthpiece just because you think the audience wants it. Joy's tone dipped, sweet as sugar and sharp as vinegar. Nobody's asking you to be a mouthpiece. But you come here, Mr. Integrity, telling folks they're puppets if they don't think like you. Denzel's eyes hardened, but his voice stayed calm. I never said that. I said the strings are real. And you prove it every time you twist someone's words to sell the next outrage. Whoopi's hands rose like she might calm a pair of alley cats. Joy, let him breathe. Denzel, finish the thought. The hush hummed when he did. You think these seats give you the power. They don't. The audience does. The folks at home, the ones who've been lied to so many times they don't even know who to trust. They give you the power, or they take it back. Joy's smile was tight as piano wire. And you're here to take it back for them? Denzel tilted his head, that slow, dangerous grin sliding in. I'm here to remind them they can take it back themselves. Sonny spoke now, her voice calm but heavy with a weight that made the hush lean even closer. You're saying we're all complicit. Denzel's eyes never left Joy's. I'm saying you don't get to tell people they're free when you've sold the chains in prettier packaging. Joy's pen stilled. She pushed her chair back an inch, enough that the hush snapped around her movement. You sound just like every other conspiracy nut out there. Everything's rigged, everyone's lying. Denzel shook his head, slow, steady. No, I'm saying the game is old. And when you call people crazy for seeing it, that's how you keep it alive. The hush pulsed with that line. A low exhale, a shuffle of feet, like the audience felt the words stick to their ribs. Whoopi leaned forward, her voice softer than before. So what's the fix, Denzel? You sit here, you drop the bomb. Now what? He held her gaze, that quiet certainty burning behind his eyes. We start seeing each other. For real. Not through hashtags or sound bites. We ask who profits when we fight. And we stop handing our power to people who'd sell their own mothers for the next viral clip. Joy's laugh was ice cold now. So that's it. We all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Denzel's smile flickered, just enough for the hush to feel the cut beneath it. You'll never get it, Joy. Because your job depends on us staying divided. Sonny cut in, her eyes flicking from Denzel to Joy. You're saying this table, this whole show, it feeds the machine. Denzel's voice dropped, almost a whisper. It does. And so do I, when I pretend I can't see it. Joy slammed her hand on the table so hard the mugs rattled. Then why are you here? Why sit in this chair at all? He leaned back, his words clear as a bell. Because sometimes the truth has to be spoken right where the lie lives. The hush split wide, the audience frozen in that raw stillness that says they know he's not playing a role this time. Joy sat back, her pen on the table, eyes sharp, but her voice suddenly smaller. You think you're better than us. Denzel leaned in, elbows back on the table, every word slow and precise. No, I just won't be your puppet. And the hush folded around them like a curtain that wouldn't close yet, not while there was more fire left to burn. The hush did not break after Denzel said it. I won't be your puppet. If anything, it coiled tighter around the studio lights, gripping the back of every audience member's throat until the air felt too heavy to swallow. Joy Behar kept her eyes locked on him. That smile of hers stretched so thin it looked ready to snap. Whoopi cleared her throat, but didn't lean in yet. She knew better than to cut the hush when it was holding everyone honest. Sonny Hostin's pen hovered over her notes, but even she let the silence breathe a second longer, just to see if Denzel would flinch. He didn't. He just sat there, hands folded, like he had all the time in the world to wait for someone else to be brave enough to speak first. It was Joy who did it. Her voice came out so calm that it scraped the hush raw. So that's it. You sit here, lecture us about systems and puppet strings, but you don't have a plan. Just a big speech. Denzel didn't blink. Truth is a plan. People spend their whole lives running from it. Joy's laugh was like a slap across a quiet church. Truth? You think the folks watching at home can pay their rent with your truth? They can't fill their tanks or keep their lights on with your truth. Sonny leaned in, soft but sharp. Joy, let him answer. Joy ignored her. You want to play preacher, Denzel? Fine. Who are you saving? The kid in the street? The single mom? You got a check ready for all of them. Or is it just words today? Denzel's eyes stayed steady, but his jaw flexed once, just enough for the hush to catch it. I know what words can do when they're honest. I know what a lie costs when people wrap it up pretty and sell it as hope. Whoopi folded her arms, her tone dipping low. Denzel, you've talked before about how the industry uses people, uses your face, your roles, your reputation. Is that what you're talking about now? Denzel turned to her, and for a second the hush loosened, just a hair. Yeah, because it's bigger than Hollywood. It's in politics. It's in this table, right here. They make you pick a side so you never ask who profits while you fight. Joy scoffed. You think you're above sides? Denzel leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice deep enough that the hush rattled like a train on old tracks. I don't pick sides that use me like a mascot. If you stand for something, you stand for it all the time, not just when it makes you look good on a segment. The hush hummed. A few audience members shifted. One woman near the front squeezed her friend's hand, the sound of skin on skin louder than a cough in that thick silence. Sonny spoke up, gently but with steel behind every syllable. But what about accountability, Denzel? You say you don't want to be used, but what do you do with your platform? Do you use it for more than talk? His eyes flicked to her, softer than they were for Joy. Every chance I get. I show up where there's no cameras. I sit with kids nobody wants to mentor because they think they're a lost cause. I write checks, sure, but my face doesn't need to be on every charity ribbon. Some things don't belong on a headline. Joy pounced on that. So we just take your word for it? Trust me, I'm Denzel Washington. You've built a whole career selling truth that someone else wrote for you. But when you're off script, it's all mystic nonsense. The hush like that. It rolled the word nonsense around the studio like a stone in a tin can. Denzel didn't so much as flinch. You want a script, Joy? He laughed once, but it didn't touch his eyes. Here's your script. Vote blue, hate red. Hate your neighbor if he wears the wrong hat. Stay mad enough you don't notice the money moving behind your back. That's the script. Whoopi's eyes flicked to Joy. We're not saying you're wrong, Denzel. But people need a way forward. If you rip it all down, what do you build in its place? Denzel's voice dropped to a whisper that made the hush lean in so hard. You could hear the hum of the lights overhead. You start by seeing your neighbor as human again. Not a vote. Not an enemy. Not a hashtag. Joy was done waiting for her moment. She leaned forward so far that her hair brushed the table. That sounds real nice for a man who goes home to a mansion behind gates. You ever have to stand in line for bread, Denzel? You ever been shot at for living in the wrong zip code? His eyes snapped to hers. Calm, but the hush knew what calm looked like when it was holding back a storm. I've had friends shot dead in the street. I've buried people I loved who never got a second chance because nobody saw them as worth saving. So don't tell me I don't know. Joy's smile vanished, but her voice stayed steady. Then why do you sit here acting like you're better than us? Denzel didn't blink. Didn't break. I'm not better than anyone. I'm just not your puppet. The hush clung to that word like it was the only thing left to hold. The table sat in that silence. Just the low buzz of the studio lights, the audience frozen, waiting to see which way the fire would spread next. The hush in the studio didn't budge. It wrapped around the table like a vice, holding every heartbeat in place while Joy Behar stared Denzel Washington down like she was sure he would finally fold under the lights. But Denzel didn't fold. He sat forward, his fingers clasped so loosely they looked relaxed, but the hush felt the tension humming in the bones underneath. Whoopi Goldberg spoke first, her voice the closest thing to a breeze in the heat that had settled in everyone's chests. Denzel, you said you're not a puppet, but a lot of people would say you're out of touch. You're a movie star. You don't have to worry about the same things the rest of us do. Denzel's eyes turned to her, steady, that deep, patient calm he wore like armor. You're right. I'm blessed. But just because I got out doesn't mean I forgot what it was like to be hungry. Or to stand in line for a job you know you won't get because someone already decided who was next in line. Joy snorted, that single harsh sound bouncing off the hush like a coin hitting concrete. It's not the 70s anymore, Denzel. You're not that kid in Mount Vernon. You're the system now. You're the big man telling folks how they should think. Denzel's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite a threat. I don't tell people how to think. I remind them they're allowed to. Sunny Hostin leaned in, pen tapping lightly on the rim of her mug. But you come here and say we're the problem, too. You point at us like we're the strings on the puppet. Denzel turned to her, softer than he was with Joy. I didn't say you're the only problem. I said when you make money off keeping people angry, you can't pretend you're innocent. The hush trembled on that word, innocent. Joy leaned back, arms folded tight across her chest. You really think you're clean? You've done movies that glorify violence, drugs, crooked cops. You've played the system's game and cashed the checks. Denzel's eyes didn't flinch. I've told stories about broken men because the truth is, we're all broken somehow. But the stories that heal are the ones that don't lie about it. Whoopi cut in, that calm steel in her tone again. But people say, look at Denzel, playing a hero. They see you as the good guy. Do you think you owe them more than words now? Denzel's voice dropped so low the hush squeezed closer just to catch it. I owe them honesty. That's it. Not performance, not fake unity. Just the truth that nobody's going to save them but each other. Joy leaned forward, her voice slicing the hush into ribbons. So what? You're done saving them on screen too? What do you want? Applause for telling folks to fend for themselves. He raised an eyebrow, so slight you'd miss it if you weren't leaning in. You think I owe them a fairy tale. But the world doesn't work like that. Sonny's pen stopped tapping. So how does it work, Denzel? If you're not the puppet, who is? Who's pulling the strings now? Denzel didn't blink. He just turned his eyes back to Joy, who was waiting for him to blink first. The string is fear, Joy, and it runs through every headline that tells you your neighbor's the enemy. Every clip that says you should hate someone you've never met. Joy's eyes narrowed, the hush picking up the pulse in her throat. That's rich coming from a man who plays the villain when it suits him. Denzel laughed once, but it wasn't warm. Sometimes the villain's just the only one telling the truth. Whoopi's chair creaked as she leaned back, the hush shivering at the sound. Truth about what? His voice went soft again, that hush-hold whisper that made every ear in the room bend closer. Truth about what we give up when we choose comfort over courage. When we let other people tell us who to hate, what to fear, who to trust. Joy's pen hit the table so hard it bounced. That's all so easy for you to say. You have a house in Beverly Hills. You don't have to live with the consequences when you tell people to stop listening. Denzel didn't flinch. You think I sleep easy? I've watched people die in real life, not just on screen. Good people. Because they believed someone who told them what they wanted to hear instead of what they needed to know. Sonny's voice slipped in again, gentle but unyielding. And you think we're just that? Puppets on TV? Denzel turned to her, softer now. I think you're people with power. And you know what happens when you use that power to stoke fear instead of courage. Joy's chair screeched back an inch. Fear sells, Denzel. That's the truth you don't want to say out loud. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on hers. I'll say it out loud. Fear sells because you sell it. And I'm not here to boost your ratings. The hush twisted that line around the room. Coiling in the phones lifted in the audience, the people on the edge of their seats, waiting to see if Joy would swing back harder. And she did. Then why are you here, Denzel? Her voice dripped with a kind of sugar that could kill flowers. If you hate the game so much, why sit at this table? Denzel's smile was a razor's edge now. Because sometimes you have to sit at the table and flip it over. The hush broke on a single gasp, a chair squeak, a tight cough someone failed to stifle. But the hush didn't fade. It snapped right back, tighter, closer, like the air itself knew this was only halfway to the end. The hush that settled over the View's studio after Denzel Washington said he'd flipped the table didn't feel like normal TV tension. It felt like a thread pulled so tight it could slice through the air. The audience leaned forward as one, phones hovering just high enough to catch whatever happened next. Joy Behar shifted in her chair, fingers drumming the table's edge like she was itching to break that hush herself. But Whoopi Goldberg beat her to it. Her voice was soft, but edged with iron. You say you want to flip the table, Denzel. You think we're sitting here protecting something dirty. Denzel turned to Whoopi, his voice like a quiet hammer on stone. I think you're protecting the illusion that this table gives people power. But all it really gives them is the same fight, recycled every week. Joy let out a sharp laugh that splintered the hush. Recycled? Please. We talk about what matters. People come here to hear different views. Denzel's gaze didn't budge. And what do you give them? You give them someone to hate. That's what keeps the lights on. Sunny Hostin's pen paused mid-note. She looked at Denzel, voice careful but firm. So what, Denzel? The truth is what? No table, no debate, just what you say it is. His tone softened for her, but only by a hair. No, the truth is uncomfortable. It's not about agreeing with me. It's about questioning who benefits when we keep fighting. Joy snapped her fingers once, a crisp pop that echoed over the hush like a starter's pistol. Oh, spare us. You've sat here for 20 minutes throwing stones at this show, at us. You think you're not selling fear too? You think you don't benefit from this little performance? Denzel leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on Joy's. I didn't come for performance. I came because people need to hear they're not the enemy of their neighbor. You want to keep us divided. I want to remind them they don't have to be. Whoopi's voice slid in, heavy and low. Denzel, people watch this show to feel heard, to know they're not alone. He turned his eyes to her, a flicker of gentleness there, but wrapped in flint. And that's good, until you sell them a villain every time you need to boost the views. Joy's hand slapped the table again, the hush shivering at the echo. You're calling us grifters now? That it? Denzel shrugged. So calm. The hush squeezed tighter just to make sure it heard him right. If the shoe fits. A few gasps crackled through the crowd. Sunny's pen tapped the table, her tone cutting in. But you can't just blow it all up, Denzel. People want someone to blame for why life is so hard. They want an explanation. He met her eyes, and for a moment, the hush softened under the weight of his voice. I know they do, but a real explanation is harder than a soundbite. It means looking at who profits when your hope is dead. Joy leaned back, crossing her arms so tight they looked like they might strangle the words in her chest. Well, maybe you should look in the mirror. You've played crooked cops. You've made violence look noble. You've built your career on conflict. His lips twitched, just once. And I've never pretended it was real life. But what you do here, you sell real life as entertainment. You make people forget what's real and what's theater. Whoopi jumped back in, her voice calm but clipped. So what's real, Denzel? You want people to stop trusting the news, stop trusting each other. Then what? He leaned back, folding his arms across his chest like he'd decided he wasn't moving an inch. Then they start talking to each other again. For real. No filter. No producer telling them what they're supposed to be mad at today. Joy laughed, mean and thin. You want people to do that with no guide? No fact-checking? No filter? They'll eat each other alive. Denzel's voice was so soft it made the hush lean in on tiptoes. They're already doing that, Joy, and you're feeding them the script. The audience rippled, a low murmur, a cough, the sharp snap of someone's gum somewhere in the second row. The hush snapped back around it all like a rope. Sunny leaned forward now, her words careful, but her eyes locked on him like she was hunting for a crack. People will hear you and say you're giving them permission to believe anything, to ignore the facts they don't like. Denzel nodded once, slow as a hammer dropping. I'm giving them permission to ask who wrote those facts and why. Joy's chair scraped the floor as she pushed back a full foot now, voice rising just enough that the hush trembled. You sound like every tinfoil hat I've ever seen on Facebook. What next, Denzel? The earth is flat. He didn't even blink. No, Joy, but the world is more than what you see through a screen. And the truth doesn't need your permission. Whoopi's eyes flicked to Joy, then back to Denzel. You know what happens when you pull people off the leash? They find their own monsters. His answer came so quiet it barely touched the hush, but it hit the bones under it. Or they find out the monsters were never their neighbors. They were sitting at the head of the table. The hush cracked on that line. Phones lifted. A few gasps popped like fireworks muffled in wool. Joy opened her mouth, but the hush shut her up before she could fire back. Denzel just sat there, arms crossed, voice low but iron in the spine. I won't be your puppet, and I won't sit here and pretend your script is all there is. The hush knew then. The next blow would break something for good. Joy Behar's lips parted, but the hush snapped them shut before the words could crawl out. Her fingers drummed the table, that little tick giving her away in a room that could smell fear, pride, and the sour tang of ego all in one breath. Whoopi Goldberg's tone dipped low, heavy enough to feel like the hush had a voice of its own. Denzel, people come here to feel heard. They trust us to ask the questions they're afraid to ask themselves. Denzel turned to Whoopi, no anger in his eyes now. Only that stillness that made the hush lean closer, just to see if it could crack him. And you do ask the questions, sometimes. But too often you answer them for people before they even know what they think. Joy leaned forward, both palms flat on the table. You want chaos then? You want people to just throw out facts, science, history, because you say the puppet masters are pulling the strings. Denzel's smile didn't reach his eyes. I want people to remember how to think before they're told what the answer is. Sunny Hostin spoke now, her voice sharp but calm, cutting the hush like she was gutting a fish in one stroke. But what about when the truth hurts people, Denzel? You say you don't want to be used, fine. But what happens when people use your words to justify their worst instincts? He turned to her, softer than he'd been with Joy, but firm as stone. I trust people more than the machine. If you tell them the truth long enough, they remember how to see through a lie. Joy's laugh cracked the hush in half, a brittle, ugly sound that bounced off the stage lights. You trust people? You really think the folks sitting at home care about your deep truths when they can't afford eggs? Denzel didn't flinch. I think they care about not being lied to anymore. even when the truth stings. Whoopi's eyes narrowed, her hand tapping her mug. You don't think you're giving them false hope? Or worse, leaving them with nothing when you walk off this stage? Denzel leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on hers. I'm not their hope, Whoopi. I'm just one man reminding them they're allowed to ask who's selling the poison in the pretty bottle. Joy stood up now, a motion that made the hush stand with her, the audience shifting like they knew something final was about to drop. You think you're righteous, Denzel, but you're just another rich man telling poor people how to feel. He stood up too, calm as a stone in a storm, looking her in the eye. I'm not telling them how to feel. I'm telling them they don't have to buy the script you're selling. Joy's voice rose, hands waving at the cameras now. Oh, so you're above it all? You came here for the ratings too, admit it. He didn't blink. No, I came because if I say it out there, nobody listens. But if I say it here, people can't pretend they didn't hear it. The hush rippled, a few scattered claps trying to rise up from the audience, but smothered by the raw tension hanging over the table like a storm cloud that couldn't decide where to strike. Sonny leaned forward, voice gentle but sharp as glass. So what do you want, Denzel? A revolution? A riot in the streets? His shoulders stayed loose, but his words hit like a brick through a stained glass window. I want people to remember that you can disagree without destroying each other, that you can love your neighbor without needing to hate his politics. Joy slammed her palm on the table, that final echo snapping the hush wide open. You're naive. You can't save everyone with your big words. His stare pinned her there like a nail in fresh wood. I'm not here to save them. I'm here to say I won't help you bury them. The hush swallowed every word, wrapping them up tight in the air between them. The cameras caught every muscle twitch in Joy's jaw as she realized she had nothing left but volume, and Denzel wouldn't give her that either. Whoopi's voice cracked through the silence. So what happens now, Denzel? He looked at each of them in turn. Whoopi, Sonny, then finally Joy, before turning to the audience, that hush like a velvet hammer pounding each word into their ribs. Now you choose. You choose if you want to be fed poison or you want to taste truth, even when it's bitter. You choose if you want a neighbor or an enemy. You choose if you want to keep handing your mind over to people who profit off your fear. He stepped back from the table, the hush stretching around him like a final curtain. I'm done playing a role I never auditioned for. I won't be your puppet, and I won't let you write my lines. Joy's voice rasped behind him, small and sharp like a thorn in an open wound. You'll come back. They always come back. He paused, one hand on the back of his chair, turning just enough that the hush caught the raw edge in his voice. Not if I have to lie to do it. And then he walked off, not fast, not dramatic, just a man stepping out of the spotlight that couldn't hold him hostage anymore. The hush closed behind him like a door nobody else at that table knew how to open. And for a breathless second, nobody clapped. Nobody cheered. They just sat there, Joy glaring, Whoopi staring, Sonny scribbling something down she'd never say out loud. All of them realizing Denzel hadn't left empty-handed. He'd left with the truth. And he'd left them with nothing to sell but the scraps of the lie.